In 1918, Henry Ford had a problem. His assembly lines were moving faster than any manufacturing operation the world had ever seen. Workers were churning out Model Ts at a pace that redefined what a factory could accomplish. But the drills they used were anchors, heavy, cumbersome machines that required two hands, a strong back, and serious physical effort just to operate. On a production line running at Ford's tempo, that kind of tool was a bottleneck. So Ford did what Ford always did. He picked up the phone and called someone. The man on the other end was A.H. Peterson, a young Wisconsin tool and die manufacturer with a reputation for solving problems other people said were impossible. Ford's commission was straightforward. Build him a portable quarter-inch drill that a single worker could operate with one hand. What Peterson built in response would eventually become one of the most recognizable brands in the history of manufacturing. But to understand why the red Milwaukee tool in every professional's van or belt means what it means today, you have to understand how many times the company that makes it almost died before it found out who it actually was. Peterson went to work. The result was the whole shooter, 5 pounds, powered by a series-type Westinghouse motor, one-handed operation. At a time when a portable hand drill typically meant an awkward, heavy machine that fatigued workers within minutes, 5 pounds felt almost revolutionary. It was the first industrial drill genuinely light enough to be operated with one hand, while still powerful enough for heavy-duty production work. Ford liked it, workers liked it, and Peterson began building a small business around the tool. In 1922, he took on a business partner, Albert F. Siebert, and the two formalized what they had been doing as the A.H. Peterson Company. It lasted approximately 1 year. In 1923, fire destroyed the manufacturing facility. Financial turmoil followed. The company went bankrupt. Peterson walked away from the industry entirely. What might have been the end of the story became the beginning of a different one because of what Siebert did next. He went to the auction, he bought the remaining assets, and he reopened the company under a new name. The Milwaukee Electric Tool Corporation, founded in 1924, with a single product and a single mission, fully realized the sales potential of the Peterson hole shooter. The problem Siebert faced immediately was that he could not afford to manufacture tools at any meaningful scale. The fire had not just destroyed equipment. It had destroyed the capital buffer that makes manufacturing viable. Milwaukee Electric Tool needed cash flow before it could build anything. The solution was elegant in its simplicity and accidentally brilliant in its strategic value. Milwaukee stayed in business by repairing other companies' tools. Any tool that broke down in the surrounding region, regardless of what brand it carried, had a chance of ending up in Milwaukee's repair shop. Milwaukee's engineers would take those broken machines apart, fix what needed fixing, and hand them back. But they were doing something else at the same time. They were studying. Every burned-out motor that came through the door was a lesson in what operating conditions pushed motors to failure. Every stripped gear was a data point on torque loads that exceeded design tolerances. Every cracked housing was evidence of a mechanical stress the original engineers had not accounted for. Milwaukee was running an intelligence operation funded by its competitors' customers inside a workshop that ostensibly existed to put those competitors' tools back into service. Because they kept constant tabs on their customers' needs and the shortcomings of the tools brought to them for repair, Milwaukee employees were able to determine exactly which niches needed to be filled in the marketplace. And when Milwaukee's engineers took those lessons and applied them to the redesigned hole shooter, the result was a tool specifically engineered to survive the failure modes they had seen kill everyone else's products. This is a business strategy worth pausing on, because it has almost never been replicated at this scale. Most companies learn about competitor weaknesses from salespeople, market reports, and customer surveys. Milwaukee learned by literally taking broken tools apart with their own hands, over and over, until they understood the failure mechanisms better than the companies who designed those tools in the first place. The reinforced hole shooter that came out of this process was harder, more durable, and more motor efficient than anything else available. It became a must-have in the automotive and metalworking industries, and that reputation attracted a customer that would define Milwaukee's next chapter. By 1930, Milwaukee Electric Tool Corporation had begun producing tools for the United States Navy. The Navy was not an easy customer. Military procurement in the 1930s meant specification sheets, testing protocols, and quality standards that civilian markets never demanded. Milwaukee received an equipment specification rating for its electric drill, meaning it had been tested and certified against the Navy's own engineering requirements. What followed was a systematic expansion of the product line to include portable hand grinders, electric hammers, sanders, and polishers, all manufactured to naval specifications. Being built to Navy standards in 1930 meant something specific and consequential in engineering terms. It meant the product had been tested against load profiles, temperature ranges, and operational stresses that civilian use cases rarely approached. It meant the failure modes had been analyzed and designed around, not just discovered by customers in the field. When World War II came, Milwaukee was already positioned. The hole shooter was essential to the manufacture of military aircraft. The production volumes required to build enough planes to fight a two-theater war were extraordinary, and tools on those production lines needed to work reliably every shift without breakdown. The United States Navy placed significant orders directly with the company. Pleased with the fact that tools were being built to their standards, Navy procurement officers committed to Milwaukee as a preferred supplier at exactly the moment when military contracts represented the most reliable revenue in American manufacturing. That certification was not just a wartime revenue stream. It was a permanent reputational asset. Milwaukee had been defined at the highest quality standard available in American manufacturing as the tool that the military trusted. After the war, the company went on the most productive innovation run of its first century. In 1949, Milwaukee invented and introduced the first half-inch right-angle drill. This sounds like a modest product update, but for the tradespeople who would use it, it was transformative. Before the right-angle drill, a plumber or electrician working in a tight wall cavity or trying to drill through a joist in an already framed building faced a fundamental problem. A standard pistol grip drill projects straight forward from the point of drilling. Put that drill in a narrow wall cavity and you cannot turn the chuck. You literally cannot fit the geometry of the tool into the space where the work needs to happen. The right-angle drill solved this by putting the bit at 90 degrees to the motor, allowing the tool to fit into spaces where no previous drill could operate. It was not invented for the mass market. It was invented for plumbers, for electricians, for the specific professionals, who had been telling Milwaukee's repair shop and product development team for years that there was a job that no existing tool could do. Milwaukee identified the problem from its own customers, built the solution, and created a new tool category in the process. 2 years later, in 1951, came the invention that became Milwaukee's most famous single product, the Sawzall. Before the Sawzall, a portable cutting tool was a circular saw, which required two hands, a surface to rest on, and a straight cut to be useful. The concept behind the Sawzall was different. Take a reciprocating hacksaw blade, the kind of blade that had always existed only in handheld hacksaw frames, and power it with a motor. The result is a tool that can cut through wood, metal, plastic, and drywall in any orientation, in any position, in any direction, with one hand, while the operator stands wherever they need to stand. This was the first portable reciprocating saw in history. Milwaukee did not improve an existing category. It created one from nothing. The Sawzall became so synonymous with the tool concept it invented that the brand name became the generic descriptor. Tradespeople across America call any reciprocating saw a Sawzall the same way they call any adhesive bandage a Band-Aid. That kind of brand penetration is not bought. It is earned by inventing something that genuinely does not exist yet. The whole hog followed in the 1970s, another tool built in response to a specific trade need. New home construction required large diameter, holes to be drilled through studs and joists for pipe and conduit runs. The loads involved in drilling those holes were beyond what standard pistol drills were designed for. Milwaukee built a dedicated high-torque drill with a configuration specifically matched to the physical demands of that one application. The whole hog became the plumber's and electrician's drill for rough-in work in exactly the way the right-angle drill had become their drill for tight space finish work. By 1975, Milwaukee Electric Tool Corporation was a professional-grade manufacturing company with a century-long reputation for durability, military-grade standards, and tools invented for specific trades by engineers who understood what those trades actually needed. It was also, at this point, a company that its new owners would systematically mismanage for the next 30 years. Amstar Corporation acquired Milwaukee in 1976. Amstar was, at its core, a sugar company, the owner of the Domino sugar brand. They were not a manufacturing company with deep understanding of the professional tool business. They were a conglomerate buying a profitable brand as a portfolio asset. Under Amstar, Milwaukee was managed for financial returns rather than engineering excellence. R&D investment was calibrated to quarterly performance metrics. The focus shifted from what professional tradespeople needed next to what margin the existing product line could generate now. Merrill Lynch Capital Partners bought Milwaukee in 1986. Private equity management brought the same fundamental philosophy: optimize the asset, maximize returns, minimize risk. Long-cycle R&D investment is the opposite of that philosophy. Building the next category-defining tool might require 3 to 5 years of engineering work before the first dollar of revenue returns. That is not the kind of investment that private equity ownership incentivizes. Atlas Copco, the Swedish industrial conglomerate, acquired Milwaukee in 1995. The fit was arguably better, since Atlas Copco was at least a manufacturing company with industrial tool experience, but the result was not dramatically different. By the time Atlas Copco sold Milwaukee in 2004, the firm's employment in Wisconsin had dropped to a few hundred workers. The suburban Brookfield manufacturing plant had been hollowed out. For longtime observers, the sale to a Hong Kong-based firm appeared to signal the final step in a familiar pattern: offshoring, decline, and eventual irrelevance. What followed instead was a reversal so complete that it challenges many assumptions about what corporate ownership does to American manufacturing brands. Tektronix Industries, known as TTI, bought Milwaukee Electric Tool from Atlas Copco in 2005 for approximately $626.6 million. At the time, Milwaukee was a respected but mid-tier brand known mostly for sawzalls and whole hogs. It was not growing. It was not generating the kind of excitement in the professional tool market that would suggest an imminent resurgence. TTI kept the R&D operation in Brookfield, Wisconsin, kept the engineering team intact, then invested $206 million in Wisconsin research and development facilities in a single year. More than 4.4% of total sales going back into product development every year. This is an investment rate that the Amstar, Merrill Lynch, and Atlas Copco eras simply never approached. The results arrived quickly. M12 and M18 battery platforms launched within 2 years of the acquisition. Then fuel brushless motors that delivered more power and longer runtime than any previous Milwaukee cordless tool. Then One Key, the first digital platform for tools and equipment that allowed professionals to track inventory, customize torque settings, and lock a stolen tool remotely. Then, in 2017, Packout Modular Storage. Packout is worth discussing specifically because it illustrates a strategic shift that transformed Milwaukee from a tool company into something more like a professional ecosystem. The original 5 Packout boxes and 3 tool bags, introduced in 2017, had an interlock system on the bottoms that allowed any Packout piece to stack and connect securely with any other Packout piece. This meant a contractor who bought a Packout job site box could add a cooler, a lighting unit, a vacuum, a radio, a dolly, and a full set of organizers, all of which interlock together and all of which carry the same Milwaukee branding. This is not just a product strategy, it is a switching cost strategy. A professional who has invested in a Packout system does not replace it casually. The system goes with them to every job. It sits in their van. It sits on every job site. Every new Milwaukee tool they buy adds to the ecosystem. Every competitor tool they might consider requires them to accept that it will not integrate with the system they have already built. The switching cost is not just money. It is organizational. It is the disruption of an entire system that has become part of how they work. The same logic applies to the M18 battery platform. Every M18 fuel tool in a contractor's kit runs on the same battery. Buy the M18 half-inch drill, the M18 circular saw, the M18 impact driver, the M18 rotary hammer, and the same battery charges all of them. The first M18 tool a contractor buys begins a relationship with the platform. Each subsequent tool deepens that relationship. Moving to a different battery platform means either running 2 sets of batteries or replacing an entire toolkit. By 2022, Milwaukee Tool had invested $206 million in a single year in its Wisconsin R&D facilities. By 2024, the company generated approximately $9.9 billion in revenue, up 11.6% year over year. In the first half of 2025, TTI recorded total sales of $7.8 billion, with Milwaukee posting 11.9% local currency growth. Compare those numbers to 2005, when Atlas Copco sold a hollowed-out mid-tier brand with a few hundred Wisconsin employees for $626.6 million. The same company, with the same name, the same sawzall, the same red color scheme, had become a nearly $10 billion annual revenue business, generating double-digit growth by committing to the same strategy that Albert Siebert had actually been running in the 1920s. Understand what tradespeople actually need. Build tools that solve specific problems they cannot currently solve. Invest in engineering. Be patient. The conglomerate and private equity years between 1976 and 2005 are a clean, painful case study in what happens when a manufacturing company optimized for innovation is transferred to owners whose incentive structure rewards short-term returns over long-cycle engineering investment. 3 sets of owners over 3 decades, each rational by the standards of their own financial objectives, collectively stripped the engineering capacity and growth trajectory from a company that had been built on the opposite principle. The TTI era shows what the original principle actually produces when it is properly resourced. 100 years after Albert Siebert bought the assets of a failed company at auction and decided to figure out what professionals actually needed, the business he created is generating more revenue than at any point in its history. The fire in 1923 that destroyed Peterson's factory burned down a building. What Siebert rebuilt from the ashes was not just a factory, it was a methodology. Fix what is broken, learn what failed, build something better. 100 years later, that methodology is still the reason the red tools are on every professional job site in America.